You're watching Dukascopy TV for an economic update on the Eurozone. Eurozone inflation and German unemployment data were hitting headlines today. I'm joined by Peter Vanden Houte, Chief Economist at ING in Brussels. Now, Peter, we saw some positive data out of Germany today as unemployment dropped for the first time in 5 months in December. So do you think we will continue to see more positive data and a growing rise in investor confidence?
That's most probable given the fact that if you look at confidence indicators also for December, like the IFO indicator, you see that actually new orders are still rising. Also export orders are booming. So yes, there is a high probability that we will see this recovery continuing into the first quarter of this year, and it should strengthen further because, of course, with falling unemployment in Germany, you can expect some more consumption, and that will feed itself into the recovery, further strengthening growth in the course of this year.
Peter, Eurozone inflation fell further below target last month. Are you concerned about the risk of deflation, and do you think this will put pressure on the central bank to ease monetary policy over the coming months?
Yes, the inflation rate was surprisingly low, only 0.8% if we're looking at the headline figure. But more disturbing, I think, was the underlying inflation rate, the core inflation rate. So if you exclude energy, food, and alcohol and tobacco, then we had only 0.7% inflation in the Eurozone, which is incredibly low. And so it's really very close to deflation. Especially, I would say, in the peripheral countries, because the problem at this moment is that the German inflation, notwithstanding the good growth prospects, is very low. It was only 1.2% in December, and that actually means that the peripheral countries that want to gain back competitiveness, they actually should have an inflation rate below the German inflation rate to become more competitive. And if the German inflation rate is only 1.2%, that means that inflation in the peripherals will have to be close to zero or even negative. So the danger to see deflation in some of the Eurozone members is quite high, and this is something that should be a worry for the ECB. Now, I don't think that this week already the ECB will decide to take further action, but just imagine the euro strengthening further, then this would definitely put further downward pressure on inflation rates, and then I wouldn't be surprised if the ECB decides to cut rates further, which would actually mean that some of the leading interest rates of the ECB might become negative.
And Peter, before I let you go, what else will you be closely monitoring in the Eurozone?
There is still, of course, the whole debate surrounding the banking union. There is now an agreement in terms of the European Council on the resolution mechanism, but this still has to be approved by the European Parliament, and the risk is that the European Parliament doesn't manage to find an agreement with the Council before the European elections in May 2014. Apart from that, another worry that we have is that the German Constitutional Court, which still have to decide on the OMT from the ECB, whether this is warranted under the German Constitution. This could also be a worry if they would decide that the ECB cannot use this OMT or can only use it with the approval of the German Parliament. So this would also cast some doubt on the solidity of the Eurozone, and that could cause turmoil. But that's a worry that we are trying to follow up on closely.
Peter, thank you very much. Well, viewers, do stay tuned as we have plenty more coming your way.